Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May 2021 edition of the Vernon Salon Series. This is the last salon before we take a break for summer for a few months. Um, I am absolutely delighted to have writer Nicola Waldron here tonight, and I will tell you a little bit more about her in just a second. The Vernon Salon series is a music series that I founded about 5.5 years ago. And the idea was to bring together friends and local people in the community and come over for a live in-person salon. Somebody would play some music or read some poetry or give a little talk, and then we would all hang out and chat and get to know each other afterwards. And the pandemic put a little quash on the live version of that. But for about a year now, I've been doing them virtually over YouTube, which is how you're seeing this tonight. And the upside to that is that I've been able to invite friends who are not necessarily in the Bay Area. They might be in different time zones. Nicola is coming to you tonight from South Carolina. And so it's really opened up, opportunities for maybe different people to present stuff who wouldn't have been able to before. People can tune in from all over the world, which is really wonderful. And these videos are always archived online. So if you know anybody who would like to tune in, but they weren't able to tonight, they can always go back and watch the video later. So a little bit about Nicola Waldron. I'll read you some of her bio here. Nicola is a native of England who currently teaches creative writing at the University of South Carolina. She is a graduate of Cambridge University and the Bennington Writing Seminars, and the recipient of the United Kingdom's Bridgeport Poetry and Nye Foundation prizes. Her prose work and poetry have been featured in many publications, and she has a chapbook, Girl at the Watershed, which was chosen by Kwame Dawes for publication through the University of South Carolina's Poetry Initiative. Her recent work focuses on linking word to practices of mindfulness and deep consciousness. So the reason I know Nicola is that she was actually my teacher in high school for English for the last 2 years I was in high school, and that's how we met. And our families have kept in touch all these years, and it's been really wonderful to follow her and see as her kids get bigger and, she moved across the country and off to great adventures. So I'd like to actually invite Nicola now. And if this works, we'll have a side by side very shortly. And I think I have to remove my spotlight. It is working. Side by side? Great. All right. So, hello, Nicola.
Man.
uh, maybe you can, I know I read your official bio, but maybe you can talk a little about what you're going to do tonight. And you were saying how we met, which I kind of just, just mentioned, but go ahead.
Thank you so much, Anne. I'm so thrilled to be here and to be invited to participate. Um, it's been such an interesting journey to have you as my student, and now I kind of feel like I'm your student. So it's kind of cool. In any case, we're fellow artists, and the last time I saw Anne was actually in South Carolina when she was playing a concert with a fellow musician. Um, and it was just a really wonderful experience because there's not a great deal of culture here. so, so it was wonderful to have them come. Anyway, I've been teaching yoga for the last couple of years, and luckily I uh, did my teacher training in yoga right before the pandemic. So I've been kind of continuing with those studies during this year and a half. Um, and I've been writing poems for my yoga students to kind of help create a mood um, for them to practice inside of. Um, and so I'm going to share a few of those poems with you tonight, and also some poems about COVID and our COVID experience, my COVID experience. So there's little bit of a mixed bag, but we would love to invite you to just relax, sit back, even lie down with an eye pillow on your eyes and just listen. And Anne's going to provide some beautiful music in between the poems, and I'm just really looking forward to it.
Great. Thanks, Nicola. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with the program, and then afterwards, if everybody would like to stick around on the sidebar on your YouTube video, you should see a little chat feature, and we're happy to answer any questions afterwards. We'll probably have a little conversation anyway, but always happy to get questions from people tuning in. So give me one sec to sort my music, and we will start.
This candle, whose flame dances a place to fix the mind. This poem, pebble, daisy in a jar, the outside carried in. So we. This golden bowl, its music lingering in the grain, waits for me, tap with kindness the rim, set free its song. The world's great beauty gathered here, what grows in silence and quiets the blood. Wick, petal, page, the long vibration of bowl and chime, each one reminding us that flame is flower, is word, is song, is stone, is life. So we. Palm to heart, I bow to all. Prepare the space with joy. Though each thing's precious, lovely, true, nothing's needed but what's within. The flame, the flowering, breath in body, the world's one spirit, seated at heart's altar and humming peace. Dear love, dear self, we've known each other so long, you and I, united in this breath, this body. We've laughed and cried. Sometimes we've shattered, then swept ourselves together into one. Dear love, dear self, how long it's been since I looked on you with the wonder you deserve. Delighted as the first time we met, that shy, bright, sweet hello. Dear self, let me espouse you now. Let me dress each day like we are headed for the one great festival of our life. Walk with me through the crystal gates and out into the banquet hall, its windows flooded with unending light. An infinite choir singing Om, singing Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. peace, peace, peace. This one is called Old Growth. New to the earth, you glimpsed for a long second your own magnificence, a creature to be wondered at, just as all your life you've marvelled at others, how that man tilted his head and you caught fire, the way another struck you into silence, how a woman unlaced her throat and out flew song. The pictures your father painted, steeped in blush and fog, bougainvillea, close up, then the distant hill. Your mother's voice summiting the stairwell, car tires crunching through gravel, spitting up stone. In that first bright moment of your life, you saw who you were through the soft veil of yourself, and left to curiosity, you opened, 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 like the blue flax shimmering in its rain-turned bed, the lilies reaching tall to find the light, like your father's laugh, his head tipped back to better drink the joy. You too bared your supple layers, and people kindly took you in, till, father gone and mother trailing sorrow's sharp perimeter, all celebration stopped. Shoved back, you shuttered the thousand gates to who you were, then spent almost a lifetime learning to denude again the core, to unfix the world-trapped, wintered brain. Sometimes you tire of tramping the lanes in search of origin, of stopping alone to strip and buff the soul. The forest thick around you with its swoop and scurry, its rude tectonic litter, both spore and bird indifferent to your task. Then you slip back into longing for some eye to see you, a phone call, an embrace, your father's, mother's smile. But on the good days, breath fanned by stillness, you burn. So, this next set of poems begins in January 2020, when there were inklings of a pandemic. Hadn't quite reached America. Um, and I had the great good fortune to go down to Miami. I'd never been to Florida before. And we got to go snorkeling, which is one of my favorite pastimes, but not so great in January off the coast of Miami. So this is called Snorkeling in January. We enter grey waves, a woman and her daughter, 40 years between us. Breathing through plastic tubes, we brave the cloudy, coral-bottomed sea. We stumble, rubber-shoed, into the deep, clinging arm to arm, hands slipping, then 1, 2, 3, kick up our feet. Each time I lift my face from swell to sky, I find my body's compass gone awry, but the good salt holds us. Out near the Spanish wreck, the water clears enough for us to glimpse a few pale fish, who stop their nibbling and tilt their gaze to look at us. They too want just to be left alone, to live and not to suffer. Faltering back toward the beach, we laugh, my girl and I, at our ineptitude, at nature's whim. How what we desired today to see deep into the deep is not always delivered, want it as we might. We shake our shoes, our bathing suits, our masks, tease out our tangled hair. She soaps again in the hotel's clean, marbled tub. I sit on the big bed, legs pulled under me, close eyes and breathe. In stillness, I see the fish, the waves, the love I bear my daughter, the two of us floating together through this life. I've been reading this new year about the woman who lost her family to the sea. Son, daughter, husband, mother, father, self. The impossible tsunami of her pain, the endless tumbling. We cannot see through murk and panic, through things stirred up, must wait for the water to settle, return again and again till the conditions are right. Meanwhile, I sit quiet on the bed, look in at the great reef of the mind, its little fleet of fish navigating the bright coral, the tides of heart and breath. Hello, fish, I say. Hello, hello. And everything clears. So shortly after returning from Miami, just before the big lockdown, I had another wonderful opportunity to go during my spring break up into the mountains between Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky, right on the cusp of those three states, and do some writing. And so this is one of the poems that came out of that moment of being up in the mountains right on the cusp of winter becoming spring. And it was the day I came back was the day we all went into lockdown. So this is called Leaving Winter. Though her sister trees are bare, laid dark against the sky, the cherry knows when to blossom, takes her cue from the inside, laughs at her own nerve, not caring she's the first, the fool who blooms in snow, listens to herself and leads, her petals mobbed by bees, her green life pushing through, first in the field, her increase sure, her sweetness. So now we're in quarantine, and this poem is called Quarantine. Cloud scudding over tree and rooftop, over all our fret and fuss, racing toward England, where my mother too stands in her garden, ankle deep in dew, tips back her head, wonders when again she'll touch a human face. So I have a poem called Disappointment, but I'm not going to read it. I'm going to read the one called Hope. So if you want disappointment, contact me later. But here's some hope. The disappointment, by the way, came as a result of my brother not being able to get married as he had planned in Crete during the summer of 2020. And we had all booked to go for a big family occasion. He was going to marry his beloved from Kuala Lumpur. And now they're living in England and they still haven't been able to get married. Anyway, this, I guess, is for them. It's called Hope. The hip swing, the hot plate, a book opened, its people waiting there, set free. My daughter peeking from the sheets, her smile escaping, breaking loose the day. The splash of my son breaching from his dreams, the swell and crash, screech of the shower, a map of boyness trailed across the floor. The coming home and staying in, the tell me a story, a secret feast. The heart's footfall, our bodies here together, crest and tumble, the stretching out and curling in, sideway bend and forward fold, call of the singing bowl, hush of the breath. A pink-eared shell, whirled off a winter tide, the moon's instruction to fall back and leave it all to her. Let go. The letting go. So, sometime in March or April, I don't remember when now, I need to go and check my records. I came down with some symptoms and couldn't tell if it was a cold or allergies or COVID. And so, out of great caution, I shut myself in my son's room because he happened to have a room that had a bathroom attached to it. And for 3 days, um, I just handed things in and out through the door, wore a mask while I waited for the results of the COVID test that I had gone for. Um, and I guess I can tell you now that it was just allergies. But at the time, we had no idea. It was in those days when we didn't know what it looked like or how bad it would be. So there was some fear there. So this is called What I Brought into Quarantine. You have to imagine me spending my days in my 16-year-old son's bedroom. A glass of water, a kettle and a cup, thermometer and fever pills in case, my pillow and the phone, some poems to leave unread, a dish of fleshly apricots and plums, the thought of cake, a picture for the flowers I stole from someone else's yard, the pink spiked aster, lantana with its crowd of pretty heads, the lily with its jeweled auburn yawn, my throat striped likewise scarlet, some rage or mischief flashing there, the sense maybe this will be the last time, or this, my daughter sending love notes through the wall. Are you okay? The divide between sick and well. Her brother flopped in bed beside their dad, where I should be. My need for each of them, how they are what I crave. How sweet it feels to have learnt to Skype, to text, to have kept my 1,000 friends. How I am glad for every flat cliche about love and family, their shape and sway revived as I await the medic's call, her yes or no. What could but won't today now be the end? Like a flock of birds thought washed away by storm, marked lost, and me here under house arrest, ecstatic with my lot. What I learn in isolation is how much I need the presence of others, their wild electric buzz, the sight of my familiars roaming the house, shirts undone and uncut toenails scratching at the tile, the crack between door and frame where my children in separate rooms curl soft around their day. My son, long after dark, probing in hidden light his vague, untrammeled past, the impish clues that crouch between the thin lines of his book. What I missed behind the isolate's door were the paired up socks I got in wellness to pick out, the plod from room to room that stirred the idle atoms with my need to get things done, heaping popcorn in a bowl, sharing the one sweet something my family won't reject, my livingness. Me glad then to plop down and watch again that show I try to love, a group of folk just doing their best to thrive, leaving soup at the door of the unfortunate. Here, after sickness, is that chance to step back into sloth, then circle in time-worn sneakers the uninfected lanes, to nod at the woman on the corner whose name I still don't know, who cradles in loving arms her ailing dog and tells me, not for the first time, how good the rain will feel. How good. This poem is called From a Window. New leaves tremble over seed-strewn rooftops. An April wind blows through. Through glass and screen she tousles me. I am leaf and seed, lifted by the world's strong breath. Wake up, she sighs, wake up. So another good piece of fortune was that right before the pandemic, my husband finished changing one of our garages into a lovely space that we could hang out in. So it was built for writing or yoga or for the children to have some space with their friends. And part of the time, I managed to sneak in there and use it to do some yoga, which was wonderful because we were all in the house together. We've been all in the house together this whole time. Um, so looking out of the windows from the garage, and these windows my husband put in all by himself, which I am just in awe of. You could see the garden, and the windows came right down to the ground, so you could see the birds and the flowers blooming and dying, and so on. So this piece is inspired by that and is called After Meditation. The lily's green stem, steady, strong in this morning's pink, here again, light. Her everything stretched open to the bees, and that chair under the linden with its high choir of flowers, the chair's blue cushion, loyal, firm. Come sit. This, the world that holds us. Swallows rise and cats creep, wren and bluebird, marigold, frog, that child over the fence, her laughter, his wild tears, my breathing and yours, self and other, busy, still, alive and dying, alive and dying. All if we let it be well, if we open ourselves like the lily, the linden, like that chair over there, empty. So something else I got to do, which made me very happy, was in our neighbourhood. There are lots of trees, So we don't live out in the countryside, but where we live, there are lots and lots of trees, and a park not too far away where I walk or run and do yoga and then come back. And during those first months, particularly, I went for long, long walks and got to know the neighborhood that I didn't know before because I'd just been driving or going to work. Um, so I have a lot of walking poems. So this one is called Walk in Springtime. I love the bodies of trees, the way they reach up, stretch out, and shake their rebel locks against the sky. A reminder we all can rise up and leave the ground. Out here in spring's wild coming out, its chirp and sprout, its shameless rapture. I remember what Burke said about the sublime, how the dark cloud striking purple against pale makes a heaven in which the redbud can flick her fine-boned fingers at the rain. Remember, I too am invited to the party the world keeps giving in spite of everything. That all I have to do is open the door, step out, and start walking. We're nearly at the end here. A couple more poems. This one is called It Helps. It helps to push back the curtain and swing, lift in shining bands the sky, to share my breakfast with the worm, spooling down its brave autumnal wire. While late come sunflowers vie with flame-frilled coreopsis for the light. It helps to feel my son wriggle up under the sheets to greet with pokery his beanstalk toes. How happy I am to see his dream-soft limbs, the genteel sprawl of brows that canopies now the pond-soft green of his still boyish eyes. It helps to laugh, to loaf and play, then step down from the bed, place one foot, then the other, there and there, to break out into day and sit in a quiet place alone, to meet myself on the smooth page, the bright say anything page. I'm going to finish with a poem called Little Boat, Big Sea. This agitation within, a movement of the blood, brain eager to grasp rope or rudder as boat slips away from shore. Give in. There is no anchor, no harbour, only the big empty opening out before this little vessel, you. Push off now with a bright heart, fall back under the stars, let the moon carry you, the great breezes, go nowhere.
I'd like to invite Nicola back now. And once my tech support lets me know that's happening. We can proceed. Okay.
I see you, Anne. I see you. Can you see and hear me?
I can hear you. Can we see Nicola too? Okay, great. Well, for everyone listening, that was Nicola's program. But thank you, Nicola, for sharing your poetry and leading us through this. And I want you to talk more about how you. I don't know what I want you to talk more about. What I mean, we heard it so clearly through your poetry. What this time has been like, and has it been easier to write in a way during this time, or have things changed for you in certain respects? I mean, what's it been like in prose form?
Well, so when we were first sent into lockdown and everybody was home and it was very, very quiet, there was nobody on the streets. It was near the end of the semester at the university where I teach, and I teach 4 classes, so it's a pretty big load. And by March, I have had enough. So I was looking at going into campus for another couple of months. So when we were told we had to stay at home, you can imagine my reaction. I was absolutely thrilled. And Um, and yeah, those first couple of months, I wrote and wrote and wrote, because I was just so happy. I'd been waiting to have some creative time. And I still had to teach my classes, but I was able to do it online. And there was a kind of forgiveness about those first few months
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, we didn't do as much as we might have done otherwise. And so I fully exploited that. and and did lots of writing. And because I'd started teaching the yoga, I was trying to put together my um, sort of sense of what I was doing to give myself confidence to teach the yoga. And so it helped me to situate myself so that I could situate my students. And especially important because over Zoom, when we started teaching yoga over Zoom, I couldn't play music, which is such an important part of creating the atmosphere for a yoga class. I mean, you don't have to, but it really is wonderful if you can. And Anne and I talked earlier about one of the things that you're trying to do in yoga is activate the delta brain waves. There are these different brain waves, and the delta brain waves are the ones that kind of take you into what we might call the zone, where you can just totally go inside.
Mm-hmm.
And access your sort of pure consciousness, which if some of you, I'm sure, out there have experiences, is a pretty amazing feeling. So taking the music away made it quite difficult, and so I had to kind of provide um, a musical accompaniment through my voice, um, and create that kind of mood for people, and hold the space for them to do their continue to do their practice when they were feeling very anxious, and I was feeling very anxious about this whole COVID business and where it was going. And a lot of sadness and grief, and then people getting sick and losing family members, that kind of thing. I kind of had to hold people through that as best I could. And so the poems helped to ground me so I could help ground other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote a lot for those all the way through the summer. And and then when the fall came and I had to go back to teaching, I was teaching online, and this is teaching English, teaching writing and yoga. Um, but there was an expectation at that point that we would kind of go back to normal. And so I just got swamped with my work, and then the writing kind of slowed down a lot. And it's only now that we finished the school year at the university where I work that I'm able to kind of re-access that creative momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's interesting because this time last year it was very quiet. I was exploring and walking in the rain and discovering all these places I didn't know existed, and now I feel like I know the neighborhood so well.
Mm-hmm.
um, and there are so many people out there, and there's this sort of sense of tension between people being vaccinated or not vaccinated, masks or not masks, that it's a very different feeling. And I think almost lends itself more to storytelling now than to poetry.
Wow.
Um, so I'm kind of hoping at some point I will write some stories. One day we went to a place called in South Carolina called Folly Beach. This was in the summertime, and nobody was wearing a mask, and we weren't vaccinated that back then, and we all kind of freaked out, my husband and me and our kids, and tried to sort of keep away from everybody so we could have a day at the beach. But we had a miserable time because we were just so anxious. um, but the whole time I was thinking, but this would make a perfect story, Folly Beach, right? So maybe it'll even turn itself into a novel one day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's a very long answer to your question.
It's a great answer. I'm gonna check here on our chat if we have any any questions. not so far, but for those of you listening or tuning in, you're welcome to send along any questions for Nicola at this point. And I'm going to use this slight pause to just plug the series and say what I forgot to say at the beginning, which is you should see a little, that's on the bottom of your screen, a little link to support the series should you feel moved this evening. And this really helps to support the artists first and foremost, and then help the continuation of this series, which right now at this point online is really pretty much by donation only. It used to be, well, it was always by donation only in person, but we'd at least have a guaranteed minimum usually in person. So there's my little plug. And while I'm waiting for any other questions or anything to come in, I was wondering, Nicola, if you could, if you feel like it, maybe talk a little bit about your time in California, just because that's how I knew you then, and you know, maybe whereabouts you made the switch, because I actually don't remember, and you know, what's because I remember you were in California for quite a while, I think. So if you would like.
Of course. So Anne reminded me that she was at the school, the girls' school where I taught English between around 2000, 2002, that kind of time. So right on the millennium. And I lived in California for, oh goodness, how long was it? About 5-6 years.
Okay.
Not as long as I'd have liked. I didn't want to leave, but we had our son, Marin General Hospital, and this is where I need to bring in this very important fact, which is that Anne and her sister's mom, who had been a labor nurse, turned up at Marin General Hospital the night before Christmas, or it might even have been on Christmas Day. I think it was on Christmas Day. Left her family and came to help me because there was nobody helping with my rather difficult birth. And they were just very short-staffed, I guess, because it was Christmas. And so she saw me at my absolute physical worst, but at a very important moment in my life. Not only that, but lent me all sorts of wonderful things for my first baby. My son slept in the crib that I believe Anne and her sisters also slept.
I think so.
And all sorts of other things. And it was just such a precious time, and so much wonderful love in that time, which has continued. And so it's just really amazing that I get to do this with Anne tonight, and that we can do something together. And even more amazing that my son is now 16. But so we left California mostly because my husband was looking for academic work, but also because we realized that we just couldn't afford to stay there with a child. And I know a lot of people have experienced that. And we ended up in Illinois, and that's where I had my daughter. And then we moved very shortly after that to South Carolina, and have been here for over a decade now, which is crazy. Yeah, and I went back to California about 5 or 6 years ago to go to a friend's wedding, and then actually it was a little longer than that, and then again to spend a summer house sitting for somebody in Santa Cruz, and we got to visit all of the old haunts. So I really miss California, and I hope it's in my future again. But I know that you have not had an easy time living there. I was there. Luckily, there weren't any earthquakes, except a very little one, and not so many fires either. So I watch the news and really feel for everybody. And fires have burned in places where I know people, where people are living, and people I know, and it's hard to hear about that. So
Yeah.
sending you all peace and rain.
Well, we do have a question. How did you get from literature to teaching yoga?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I've been thinking a lot about that recently. I actually think they're the same thing.
Mm.
I've come to realize that all the years I wrote and buried myself in other people's writing as well, was really just a way to find myself. This is how we find ourselves, right? We, in other characters, in our own writing, we begin to examine who we are and what's happened to us and why it happened.
Mhm.
Um, and I also write memoir, and that brings back certain scenes from my life, which then I am able to understand better through writing. And yoga really is just a natural, organic extension of that practice of, in Sanskrit, it's the term for it. I believe it's svadhyaya. It's self-study is
Mm.
one of the steps of yoga, if you like, um, and svadhyaya, I think is how you say it. Anyway, the yoga is a way of just going deep inside and looking at the self, and understanding the self, but also celebrating the self, which you'd have heard in my poems.
Yep.
And that was the piece that was missing from writing and literature.
Mm.
Uh, because often when we write, and I think when we read too, we get kind of bogged down in the sorrow and the conflict and the difficulty, because of course so much literature is based on conflict and drama. And what the yoga has allowed me to do is to not to turn my back on that, but to say, yes, that's part of life, but so is joy. And it took me many, many years to figure that out. And it actually kind of started with the birth of my son.
Mm.
So that was a big turning point for me. Um, but also, all the people I knew in California, just being in California and being at the school where Anne went, San Domenico, a really beautiful community, that a very caring community. And that also was an important part in the shift from me being a rather sad person to being somebody who could really embrace my life. And I just want to share that. Yoga is also about sharing
Mm.
all of that.
Great. Well, I feel like we should end on that note because that was better than anything I could say. um, for all of you tuning in tonight, thank you so much for listening. Nicola was really great, wasn't she? And for all of you who have friends or family who would like to listen later, you can use this exact same link, which is wonderful. And we will be signing off from YouTube now, but we'll see you soon. The Vernon Salon series will come back in August or September, and we might even be back live, depending on rules and regulations and safety and all that good stuff. But it would be the first time live in over a year and a half. So here's hoping, and I'll keep everyone updated on the mailing list. And ta-ta, YouTubers, for now. Good night.